because of this claim that they say they saw Jesus resurrected. Like there's something different that goes on there.
Nope. There is absolutely nothing weird going on with the history of people claiming that people have been resurrected in history. Osiris, Lazarus, and so many other people have been claimed to be resurrected. I mean, Jesus resurrected people from the dead, and there are several other people in the Bible who also have been resurrected from the dead. This idea that it's completely unique to Jesus and therefore special doesn't make any sense.
That they're like, this is a miracle, right? Dead people don't usually rise from the dead.
Dead people never rise from the dead. And I don't mean people who are medically dead or people, I mean dead, like actually gone, where we could 100% confirm that they no longer exist and they can't come back from the grave. They never come back from the dead. Which is why, if you are a skeptic or you even care to the slightest degree about skepticism or science or anything like that, you will say that it doesn't make any sense that anybody came back from the dead, no matter how powerful they claim to be.
So, what is your personal belief when it comes to the resurrection? What do you think Do you have a belief, or do you just try to interpret the text and try to see what is the message?
The question that Joe Rogan is asking here is a slight one, but a very important one, which is it doesn't matter if it's real or not. What's really important is the message that is hidden behind the the words. Now, of course, he is not one of those Christians who is about making sure that people understand the message and they take to the goodness of God and live in a righteous way. Instead, he seems to be the one who wants to claim that he's history or the history of the Christian Bible matches up fully with reality, which is something that isn't even claimed by most Christians. A lot of Christians obviously acknowledge that some things in the Bible can't actually be true.
Well, I think so. As a historian, I do think it is a historical question.
The answer that he gives doesn't make sense again because, of course, the resurrection of Jesus is not a historical question at all. It's as much a historical question as why did Thoth invent the hieroglyphics? Why did he invent Egyptian writing? If we can take this claim as seriously as we take the resurrection, then I will put it on the same level in terms of history.
You have a guy who objectively lived. He
Incorrect. You have a guy who is thought to have lived and is reported about by several people, which gives us the impression that he might have been a real person. That is very different than objectively lived. There are people who we know don't exist today who have been reported by multiple people in the modern world, but we know they didn't exist. I mean, let's take another African, for example. Let's take Prester John. Prester John was reported and talked about as this great Christian hero who was going to save the world. And he was, all they had to do was go find him in Ethiopia. They tried their best, and there's literally documents for hundreds of years that you can find where they say they're going to find Prester John, and when they never do, of course they go, yeah, he probably never existed. But come on, you can't take many people's word for things.
he objectively died.
Well, in order for you to objectively die, you would have had objectively lived. So again, this is incorrect, at least scientifically.
And then individuals close to his inner circle claim that they see him not dead
Right.
again.
This is a highly unusual activity.
It's highly unusual activity for today for people to claim that people have come back from the dead. But I mean, I have one example from South Africa in the last 30 years of someone who claimed to be someone who came back from the dead. And that's just one person. There's people, multiple people today in this world who claim to be people who came back from the dead. It's not unusual in ancient times for people to claim that they came back from the dead. Not only that, but a lot of people claim that they had the essence of dead people back in the day. Not only was it not, it's actually the first religion, ancestral worship, and claiming that they can manipulate and live amongst us and be in our space. Not only so, it's not rare. It's actually the most common thing in history when it came to some level of religions, especially ancestral worship.
Highly unusual.
Right. So, but it's hard when you're dealing with illiterate populations, you're dealing with thousands of years of time, you're dealing with an oral tradition, and then you have us sitting here talking about it in 2024, trying to figure it at the end of 2024.
Another great observation. This is how a skeptic would look at this information, that it's information coming back from the past of someone claiming something, well, let's just say it respectfully, ridiculous if you consider how the world really works. And now they're trying to take it back to, okay, so it's fine if the person, comes back from the dead. Let's just start from that jumping point and just claim that that's real. I wonder what his response is going to be to that level of question from Joe Rogan.
Trying to figure this out, literally the end.
Yeah.
Last couple of days. It's very difficult for anybody who thinks of themselves as an intelligent person who's secular to even entertain the possibility that someone died and come back to life.
Again, a good point, but there's a reason for it. It's not just a matter of choice between secularism and religion. It's because you can't do anything with that information. Okay, let's say there was someone who died and came back from the dead back in the day. Can we do anything with that information? Can we resurrect people today? Can we do anything? No. The reason why scientists and skeptics promote secular thinking is because you can do something with secular thinking. You can invent, you can do any of that stuff. The problem with the mythological version of reality is that maybe you might accept it and think it's fine, but you can't do anything with it.
And I get that. But we've already talked about the fact that we don't think that the only thing that exists is matter and motion. We as in
Right.
you and I, right?
Right.
Like we believe that there's something else going on in this world that's a little bit crazy.
There's two key words to what he just said. One is believe, and the other one is crazy. Let's ignore the word crazy because I think it's a little harsh, but let's go to the word believe. So his response to that great question is to say, we believe that there's something else going on in this universe besides matter and movement. Well, sure, I mean, there's concepts. Concepts are neither matter or movement, but that doesn't prove anything outside of reality that we already have. But then, secondly, that's the most horrible answer I've ever heard to that question. That's probably even, I could probably come up with easier ways of justifying the religion than to say that, hey, maybe there might be something extra in the world. That sounds like a concession. That sounds like someone saying, yeah, sure, it doesn't make sense, but if you believe it, it's fine. Well, yeah, if you believe it, then of course you believe it. But that's not the problem. The problem is you're claiming that it's beyond just belief.
There's something else.
And that to, I think, exclude that, I think excludes something that you're kind of putting blinders on.
Let's address the blinders argument, because I believe that obviously, this guy is putting blinders on reality, and then you know what basically is happening is it's like seeing a hole through a wall. So in other words, there's a hole in the middle of a wall, and then there's a door and you can go outside. And what he is doing is basically putting his eye through that, through the hole, and everything that he can see from that peephole is reality. And science is basically going outside, looking around the whole, world outside, and then saying, the world operates like this based on this much evidence. And I'll give you an example of what I mean if you don't understand that analogy or whatever. Um, the Big Bang Theory. They were talking about the Big Bang Theory before. Now, the Big Bang Theory has to live up to certain scientific rules in order for it to qualify as a fact, or even the height of a theory and not just some hypothesis. And what that is it has to live up to Newtonian physics. It has to live up to some quantum physics. It has to live up to some chemistry. It has to live up to all of those things. Now, compare that to what standards do you think this person's opinion about people coming back from the dead has to live up to any of that? Think about the difference in execution and the difference in understanding, where you're taking somebody who is interested not only in the words of other people. You're taking people, scientists, who are interested not only in words of other people, not only in scientific writings of other people, but it has to live up to all the standards of known science. And this book that he's talking about, the Bible, has to live up to itself. It's not a fair comparison at all.
For. And you do have, I mean, you're right in terms of all of these ancient conventions and the ways that things were spread around. But the Gospels are written in the lifetime of the eyewitnesses. And they're written in this period of time where you have groups of individuals who could have fact-checked those things. So,
how do you fact-check someone coming back from the dead?
Well,
boom, mic drop. You see right there, Joe Rogan asking the hard questions. How do you fact-check someone that came back from the dead? The man on the screen was arrested in South Africa for claiming that he was a resurrected singer from South Africa who had died years earlier. Now, the way we can fact check today is doing DNA tests. They did DNA tests on him, and they could easily conclude that he was born of his mother and father, who we had access to. So clearly he was not a resurrected person. Now, back in the day, how the hell do you do that? Well, in order to do that again, you have to bring the person and DNA test them. You can't. Back then.
How many people saw his body, right?
Well, Paul says that 400 people saw him all at once.
401 at once. Well, let's first investigate what he just said. He said Paul said, so it means we have one eyewitness, or at least we have one witness who is claiming that there were 400 other people. It may sound like we have 400 sources, but we have one source claiming that 400 people saw it as well. This is a video of someone in South Africa also being resurrected from the dead. You can see there the woman at the front clearly showing, signs of, I don't know, grief or happiness or whatever from their quote unquote loved one being brought back from the dead. And look how many witnesses there are. And through the power of television, there means millions of people saw this person come back to life. Now, should we believe that this person was resurrected?
400 people saw the crucifixion?
No, saw the resurrected Jesus. Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15, Paul says that Jesus appeared to the disciples, and then he appeared to 400 people all at once. I mean, if we read the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Luke and Acts, so same author wrote these both documents, he says that Jesus was walking around teaching them for 40 days after he was resurrected from the dead. And so these are written within a time period when you have people who would have seen Jesus' ministry, who were there, say, at something like the feeding of the 5,000, who could have been able to verify or debunk some of these things that are being said. And you go from a bunch of scared guys who, because Jesus wasn't the only messianic figure who arose and claimed to be the Messiah.
Right.
Okay, we need to rewind on this a little bit. So, Jesus was not the only person who claimed this back in the day. Well, then let's revisit one of your earlier statements.
They say they saw Jesus resurrected. Like there's something different that goes on there.
Now, you're probably wondering, why would I make a video about this since I talk about history all the time? Well, this is part of history, and this is the stuff we have to compete with. And remember, stuff like this, some people will accept at face value and ignore real information. I want you to remember that no matter what your religion is, it's not about religion. It's about separating history from mythology. This is clearly mythology, and it's fine. Now, I want to pivot for 1 second and go back to the Billy Carson debate, which is, I think the real reason why that debate happened was because it was easy pickings for this guy. I actually wonder why he didn't go and argue with the skeptic. Why didn't he pick Alex O'Connor or any of these other atheists that exist today who have millions of views? Why does he not go and debate them about how historically accurate Jesus is, but instead choose to debate someone who, in his own opinion, is not fully educated on the history of what he's saying?